Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to the first webinar organized by the Building Services Engineering Sectional Committee for the session 2019-2020 after a brief break of 3 months due to COVID-19. Thank you all for taking time out and being here today. Even though we were unable to conduct our programs as usual, I am proud to announce you all that we actively contributed to several national level activities in order to defeat COVID-19. One such activity is that we have successfully completed the renovation of MVAC system of the ICU complex at IDH Hospital in this critical time with the collaboration of Sri Lanka Navy. Another landmark activity of our committee was the contribution of VSET team for the National COVID-19 guideline developed by the Ministry of Health and World Health Organization and few other organizations. Going back to the lecture, our guest speaker today is Engineer Priyanka Karunaratne, who will be talking to you on the evolution of defined terms in FEDIC Red Book across 4 decades. As we all know, FEDIC Red Book specifies the conditions of contract for the construction work where the design is carried out by the employer. Defined terms are the fundamentals of any type of contract which plays a vital role within the contract. Today's focus is to enlighten the audience on the periodical adoption of the defined terms in FEDIC Red Book with respect to the diversification of the construction industry. Now, let me introduce our speaker tonight, Engineer Priyanka Karunaratne. He obtained his bachelor's degree in civil engineering from University of Moratuwa, followed by a master's from University of Reading in United Kingdom in the field of quantity surveyor. Engineer Priyanka is also a qualified expert witness, having nearly 2 decades of experience as a civil engineer and a contract administrator. He is currently located in Oman as a contract specialist. Moreover, Engineer Priyanka is also known as a RICS APC assessor, mentor, and eminent CPD presenter. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please join with me to welcome our speaker tonight, Engineer Priyanka Karunaratne. Thank you. One special announcement. Please note that we will be running a live Q&A session at the end of the presentation. You may mute your microphones and videos until then. While the presentation is going on, you can post your questions to the moderator through chat. You can find the chat option at the bottom right corner of your screen. Depending on the time, we will direct your questions to the speaker at the end of the presentation. Now let's move to the presentation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Lakmini. I hope all you can hear me. Actually, my time is now 4:36. I think you are 1.5 hours ahead of me. I hope you all can see here. So it's glad to be back in the engineering field. I can see there is more than 100 engineers, contract administrators, and the people who are in the same field. So without much time, I will start my session. Before that, I would like to extend my profound gratitude to Mr. Suran Fernando, my batchmate, who has invited me to perform this session. And thank you very much. And I'm glad to be with you. Today's agenda is very precise and to the point. As the topic states, it is the evolution of the defined terms in FEDIC Red Book across 4 decades. Now, the good thing about this is that you have a twin brother of the FEDIC family within Sri Lankan context, that is SPD2, which is very closer to the context of the FEDIC 1999 version of the Red Book. So today's agenda is with a little bit of an introduction about what I'm going to talk about today. And I'm going to introduce you to a novel concept called the tiny concept. Once I go to that slide, I will explain you what it is. The tiny concept is inherent to any standard form of a contract when it goes through any sort of a evolution with time, with the experience and expertise that they gain from the lessons learned. And then I'm going to talk about the defined terms in FIDIC versus standard bidding document number 2, which is being widely used in Sri Lanka. And then I'll give you a few practical examples, and which is followed by a Q&A session. Right. Let us move on to myself. I don't think I have to explain much about myself, because I'll save that time since Lakmini has given a comprehensive explanation about me. I do believe we can move on. Right. Before starting into this session today, I would like to remind you that if you are a person who is willing to get your APC in Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors or any kind of a professional organization, you can record this as an official 2-hour session within your CPD records, continuing professional development. Right. So let us move on to today's session. When I was a kid, there was a painting, actually a picture within my parents' bedroom, where there was a small kid who was holding a bird very gently, stroking that bird. And down underneath, it mentioned, tiny good deed is better than grand good intention. So when I explored the term tiny, I found that particular word consists of 4 very important notions, which is revolving around any standard form of a contract, especially when it is subjected to a change. Number 1, transparency. Number 2, inclusiveness. Number 3, the non-intrusive approach. And number 4, yield. Quite surprisingly, the word yield is ambiguous. The word yield itself is ambiguous. If you take the dictionary meaning of the word yield, in one way, it says that you're going to produce something. It is the product that you are going to have based on the resources that you invest. And on the other hand, it says surrender, right? Whenever there is an argument or whenever there is some sort of a dispute, that sometimes you may have to surrender. So this is also very closely linked with the stakeholders of a project in terms of contract administration. Now I will move on to the next slide. The defined terms, as Lakmini has quite rightly explained, the foundation. It is like a medical dictionary. It is like a dictionary in any other field, wherein it defines the boundaries. It defines what exactly you are going to talk about, so that there won't be any sort of a repetition, there won't be any sort of an ambiguity, or there won't be any sort of a conflict. And the conflicts will be minimized based on this sort of a approach. So FIDIC, as you can see here, the red book, the FIDIC red book, where there's a clear distinction between the design and the construction. The design responsibility mainly lies with the engineer. The FIDIC terminology for the contract administrator is engineer. Sometimes the likes of NEC, that is a new engineering contract which has been issued by Institution of Civil Engineers, this word engineer has been defined as the project manager. So in some other areas we call them architect or contract administrator. The FIDIC terminology, the engineer is the person who is administering the contract, right? Then the design and the construction has been split. Now FIDIC, when they issued this 1977 version, it consisted of 15 defined terms only. Now you can understand, if there is a class where there are 50 odd people, you name 15 of them. The balance 35 doesn't have a name. You can imagine how much of a trouble that you will feel if you're a teacher. You understand what I'm saying, right? So that means there is no name, there is no person for a name, you will encounter a lot of problems. So FIDIC identified this, and with the evolution of time, there were a lot of court cases and there were a lot of other difficulties which has been faced by FIDIC, and then they realized they needed to they needed to add some more defined terms into the FIDIC 1987 version. So it has doubled, more than doubled, right? So it became 32 defined terms, right? And then after 12 years, FIDIC 1999 version totally changed its layout. You may have, if you are a user of FIDIC 1987, which you can see here, when I move this cursor, this is one of the most widely used standard form of a contract within the Middle East, right, and the rest of the world as well. For instance, FIDIC, there are FIDIC national organizations for around 104 countries in the world, where there are 195 odd countries. So 53% of all the countries are using FIDIC Red Book. I think in the Sri Lanka also there's a national organization, right? I think Association of Civil Engineers, Consulting Engineers is the national body for that one. So then in 1999, after 12 years, FIDIC totally revamped its clauses. Out of 70 odd clauses, now it has been confined into 20 clauses and some sub clauses, which is where the SBD2, which you can see on your right hand side, which you are very familiar with, which has been issued by ICTAD, which has got 55 defined terms as opposed to FIDIC 1999, 59 defined terms. In fact, I'm going to talk about those additional defined terms as well. Then you will understand that there is no problem since the Sri Lanka is an island nation and FIDIC is being used internationally, where there are borders and where there are foreign currencies which has been used likewise, right? Then in 2017, FIDIC issued its newest version with 89 defined terms. So 89 defined terms, almost 50% more defined terms with when you compare with SBD2 or FIDIC 99 version. Now, let us understand what are the principles. Now, I'm going to explain you 10 principles very quickly, which governs a defined term. If you have a defined term, the interpretation of a contract is easier because it's like you are giving a name to a particular person, right? When you're giving a particular name to a person, when you always call this person's name by the name, you can identify why it is. And then it will concise contractual provisions. Now, for example, you know there is a defined term called base date. It is within SBD2 as well as FIDIC 99 and 2017 versions. It means the date 28 days before the latest date for submission of the tender. So you wind up before submission of the tender, within 1 month's time, you wind up everything. If there is any sort of a legislation change, if there is any sort of a change pertaining to the tender, then you are not going to consider that because base date becomes the governing factor in terms of the timeline for the contractor to price the document, the tenderer to price the document. Let us then move on to the second principle, the concise contractual provisions. Why do you mean by that? Now, if there is a definition which has got a very long history, right? Now, if you see there are certain places where they explain what is a dispute adjudication board. So whenever dispute adjudication board has been referred, that particular abbreviation DAB, now into a FIDIC 2017 version, we call as Dispute Adjudication and Avoidance Board, that is DAAB. So you don't have to repeat the same thing again and again when you are using in the contract. Then it will reduce any risk of ambiguity, right? When you talk about ambiguity, I have a very nice experience. When I was working in a firm called Hanscom, it was a Canadian firm which was well established in the Middle East. There was a person called Ruan who was working with me as a quantity surveyor. Sometimes after, there was another one who came into the picture in this particular company. So they used to call the second person as Deruan. Okay, now I was wondering if there was another one, he would have been called as Deruan. Okay, so in order to avoid the ambiguity, they used that simple term Ruan and Deruan. So likewise, in the contract administration also, we never call the same name for those two things, but quite surprisingly, FIDIC has introduced the word contract price for two different meanings in 1987 version, which has now been corrected as accepted contract amount and contract price, because the contract price refers to any changes which has been subjected to the accepted contract amount. But previously they used to call the contract price at the time of signing the contract also it was the contract price, but when after it was subjected to changes, any variation, they still used to call it as the contract price. Right. Now let us understand what is the other principle. Now we have just discussed about three principles, and the fourth principle is the first letter of the defined term should be capitalized, right? First letter of the defined term should be capitalized. If defined term consists of more words, each word should be capitalized, except for its conjunctions and prepositions, because in the normal usage of the English language, when you're reading a text in a book or any sort of a literature, we usually use to identify special terms with the capitalization. So you give emphasis to that particular fact. Now, for example, whenever you are talking about the word unforeseeable, right? Within the contractor has overseen, the contractor has encountered unforeseeable circumstances. They use the word with the capital U. In order to identify, in order to distinguish the English literal meaning with the defined term, because the unforeseeable, the word unforeseeable very clearly states it is not reasonably foreseeable by an experienced contractor within a stipulated timeline that is called the base date. Now I hope you understood what it is. And when you are talking about something like bill of quantities, there is no requirement to capitalize the word of, because it looks a little bit odd. So the conjunctions and prepositions remain the same as the normal English context. But whenever there is a two-word definition, 2 or 3 word phrase, you are using the capital term in 2-3 places. So when you are going through the presentation, you will understand what is the significance of that. You can easily spot a defined term, and you can easily go up to the initial position, the first 2 pages of the red book or the SBD2, in order to identify what is the meaning of this particular defined term. The fifth principle is a defined term must be used in the body text or in definitions by capitalizing the term as defined. Now, for example, we are talking about the word subcontracting. This is very similar to the FIDIC Red Book 99 version. If you see the SBD2 version, it is also the same. Now see, item A says works which starts from simple W, even though that particular phrase started from, there is a phrase, that particular word starts from a phrase. That works is different from what is given in the latter part of this particular subclause, because the word works which starts from capital W and ends with an S pertains to the permanent works. That means what the contractor leaves behind when he goes out of the site, and the temporary works, whatever the ancillary works which is required to complete the works. It is different from the works which has been used by any sort of a accumulated value of a percentage of an accepted contract amount. There may be certain other words which is not forming part of the words which start from capital W. So it is very important to do that capitalization. Then, not to create defined term in its plain language meaning is clear, and if it is clear and unambiguous. Now, if you see the SBD2 version, there is a word called day and year. So for the word day, you don't have to use another word. Okay. So if it is plain and unambiguous, you don't use the word capitalization. Also, there is a slight deviation from the norms of the defined term, wherein there is no capital word which has been used. Now, like the third party, which I have indicated here. But quite surprisingly, if you see, FIDIC still has got this particular thing called year means 365 days. What will happen if it is a leap year? So that means still there is room for improvement. Okay. Year means 365 days. It could have been better worded as year means 365 days, except for leap years. which is 366 days. Likewise. So the seventh principle, let us move on to the next principle, that is the create only one defined term for each definition and never use a synonym where a defined concept, word or expression is. For example, there is a word called goods within the SPD and FIDIC Trade Book. It means it consists of 4 elements: contractors' equipment, materials, plant and temporary works. So it has to be unambiguous. Never use the word goods within the defined term goods. It will create an ambiguity. The 8th principle is use of the defined term. Each time the definition is meant to apply, avoid creating a defined term if it will be used only once. The word claim appears in 264 places. You can understand this particular paragraph, if it is to be repeated, it will be a very lengthy document. So the 9th principle, if a term is defined, do not repeat a part of its definition in connection with the use of the defined term. Now, for example, this mistake has been done here. You're talking about employees' equipment, and then again, within the definition itself, they are talking about the word equipment. This violates this particular defined term. So the 10th principle, it says the term defined in the body text should not be used before it is defined. This is why we have abbreviations, acronyms, or any sort of an introduction in the beginning of the book. So you don't have to repeat, you don't have to go back and do that one. In FIDIC and SPD versions, it is also there. Now you might have seen the right to vary, the variation clause, if you are familiar with that one. In the variation clause, in FIDIC 99 version and in SPD, it doesn't say it is not applicable if there is no such a schedule. If you are talking about a day work schedule, right? In the beginning of the sentence, you have to say that if there is no day work schedule, this particular clause is not applied. Towards the latter part of that particular clause, if you put something like that, it is not appropriate. If you refer FIDIC 2017, it has ironed out most of these things. Now, let us move on to the SPD2 and the FIDIC Trade Book 1999 version. It is a very clear and concise definition, the presentation. There are only 4 items. So if you are a SPD2 user, don't worry, you have jobs in the international market, right? That means you are a user of FIDIC 99, so it is something like that. If you see the defined terms, if you confine yourself into that particular aspect only, there are only 4 additional defined terms within the FIDIC 99 version, which is foreign currency and local currency, mostly in Sri Lanka. If you are dealing with rupees, there is no problem. But Sri Lanka as a single country, which if there is any sort of a international contract, you can always write particular conditions of contract and you can introduce. And the word country, again, Sri Lanka being a island nation, does not need to use the word country. But imagine that there is a wall between Mexico and USA, right? The word country has been defined in FIDIC 99 and 2017 versions as country means the country in which the site or most of it's located, where the permanent works are to be executed. Now, if this particular wall is going to be constructed between Mexico and USA, if you do it exactly at the center, FIDIC is unable to define which law governs this particular contract. Therefore, you have to have some sort of a shift towards one side, maybe America's side or Mexico's side, based on the power of these 2 countries. I'm not going to talk much about that. Okay, so there are certain ambiguous terminology also, it's there. Now, let us move on to the first notion, the transparency in a FIDIC form of a contract. Now, how FIDIC has enhanced the transparency, I'm going to talk about. I don't know whether you have heard about these advanced warning systems. I'm sure since you are engineers, you are coming from very strong technical background. If you are using a very high-end type of vehicle, right? When you're reversing that particular vehicle, there is a point beyond which the car does not allow you to reverse. There is a Bluetooth mechanism which does not allow the collision to happen. So likewise, in the trains, tower cranes, you can see whenever there is a proximity, what you can see on your right hand side, what you can see on your left hand side is a collision which has happened. It is no wonder two planes collided with each other. Can you imagine? We are talking about a space wherein there can be different altitudes a plane can fly. With all these newest technologies, two planes have crashed with each other. So it is no wonder that two of the tower cranes will clash. But in order to prevent that one, there is a technology which is coming in the health and safety aspects of a site. We call it as a proximity center. It is a Bluetooth device which deprives one of the tower crane colliding with the other tower crane. Okay, so likewise, FIDIC has introduced what is called as advanced warning. It is not a new system. Advanced warning system is in existence within new engineering contract, NEC type of contract, which has been widely used in UK and rest of the Europe. NEC type of contract has got something called early warning system. So FIDIC used the same terminology called advanced warning. This particular clause 8.4 is not there within SBD2 or FIDIC 1999 version. Therefore, in order for you to comprehend or in order for you to maintain transparency, FIDIC has introduced something called advanced warning. So there is a new defined term which is coming. There is a new defined periphery which you will enter into in order to avoid any future conflicts, right? Now, this advanced warning clause is always talk about, any project. We are talking about 3 different criteria. That is, to deliver the project on time, to deliver the project at a stipulated cost, that means within the budget, and at the right quality. This is where the engineer's input is very, very important. Even the contract administrator. The engineer and the contract administrator are almost same, but when you are talking about the sense of the word engineer, maybe a structural engineer or an electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, his role is little bit different. His or her role is little bit different from a contract administrator. So this advanced warning clause, which has been introduced by FIDIC, is very good for the SBD2 users if they are going to use any specific particular conditions of contract, which will avoid a couple of things. Number one, it will avoid future conflicts because it gives some sort of a room, because we look into these things retrospectively, not prospectively, right? In FIDIC terms of contract, that is one of the things which has been observed by most of the contract practitioners. When it underwent a lot of transition, they understood that this particular retrospective approach is harmful to the collaboration between the parties to the contract. That is why they use this advanced warning system. So each party shall advise the other and the engineer shall advise the parties. So those are defined terms, okay? Who are the parties to the contract? In FIDIC terminology, those are the employer and the contractor. So engineer is the contract administrator. So now you have room in order to give an advance warning, like to avoid collision between the tower cranes, like to avoid collision between a car reversing and the wall, right? So number one, adversely affect the work of the contractor's personnel. Now, when you are talking about the word contractor's personnel, right, actually it is not there, right? The contractor's personnel has been defined in FIDIC terminology, as well as, now this is a defined term that you can see here. Contractor's personnel consists of one leader, which is called the contractor's representative. We in our common jargon, in our common terminology, we used to call him as the project manager of the contract. But it is a different term, a different concept. The project manager is a totally different concept. So we can see that this sort of a different terminology will create ambiguity, right? Now, if you see the FIDIC 99 version and SBD2, the contractor's representative is called as the person. Okay, the person who is representing, who is the leader of the contractor's representative is the contractor's personnel. Contractor's representative is the leader, the person. But now FIDIC 2017 version added the word natural person. The word adjective, the adjective natural has been added to that. Why do you call it as a natural person? Are there any artificial people as well? Right? So yes, there are artificial people like a company. You know, when you are talking about a company, you can never call the contractor's representative as a company. That is why they use the word the natural person. It is not there within the SBD form of a contract. Right? Then it goes to adversely affect the performance of the works. What do you mean by the performance of the work when completed? Means quality. That if it is detrimental to the quality, number 2 will apply. If it is increase in the contract price, if it is detrimental to the cost, that is also detrimental to the project. Number 3, actually D, is the delay in execution of the work or the section which addresses the time aspect of that one, right? Now, there is a new dimension which has been added to any project. Time, cost, quality plus sustainability. Now, if you see item number A, if it is adversely affecting the contractor's personnel, let's say they have a transport problem, okay? They have a problem with a pandemic, it will affect the sustainability of the project as well. So this in turn, blending together enhances the transparency in the standard form of a contract. This is what is called as early warning system, which is appearing in NEC. This is a reading material for you because I don't want to go through all these things. I have some more time. I need some more time to discuss about the other things. So this early warning system is clearly stipulated within the new engineering contract, which is being widely used in Europe. Now it comes to a very, very common subject to most of the engineers. I'm sure that you have a very sound knowledge about that, which is called value engineering. Now I'm going to introduce something called value engineering rainbow. Then you might be wondering, what do you mean by rainbow? What I have done here is, actually I have taken this from the latest, if you see these 3 definitions, okay? Over time now, since still if you are going to the this particular website called this Designing Buildings Wiki, which is at the lower end of this particular slide, you can see it is talking about eliminating unwanted cost while improving function and quality, and then performance requirements at the lowest possible cost. Now, when with time, right? Now there is a 1996 version of a definition of the value engineering. Now the newest, which has been issued by one of my lecturers, actually, he's lecturing at University of Reading as a visiting lecturer, I believe, Duncan Cartridge, right? So this is where he has given this particular definition called, it is a discipline procedure. What comes into your mind when you're talking about a discipline procedure is the forces, am I right? Forces represent strength. Red is the color of strength, okay? And then it calls about the necessary function, right? That is the second color of the rainbow, whereas necessity is something independent. I'm going to talk about it in length in other slides, because if there is a necessity to complete of the works, that necessity is independent of other circumstances. Either it has been stipulated by the law, or it has been stipulated within the contract. Okay, so I'm not going to talk much about the value engineering because you can, you know about this. I don't have to waste much of your time. But there are 4 other things which I need to say. The employee will be happy when it is been achieved at the minimum cost. Am I right? So the color of yellow is the color of cheerfulness, right? Without detriment to quality, reliability, performance, or delivery, that you know about this, right? Now, I'm going to talk about this particular transparency aspect of FIDIC Gradebook. If time permits, I'm coming back to this one. I'm putting this in Omani Riyals for your information. Omani Riyal is something about 480 Sri Lankan rupees. Now, there are 3 cases which is been stipulated within the value engineering clause of the SBD2. SBD2 value engineering clause is exactly the same. So this particular concept, particular defined term, value engineering, even though it is not appearing in the beginning of the particular standard form of contract, that particular phrase, value engineering, is a defined term when you have that particular knowledge. Okay, so I'm going to talk about it. These are some cases which I have explained here. I will run through. Once I'm running through, I will come back to this one, right? So I have taken one case study from a power source from a dairy farm. This is an actual case study which has been taken from an Irish dairy farm, where there is this particular dairy farm is located in a very remote location. You don't have power to this particular place. So assume that you need to provide a power to dairy farm throughout the year in an area where no power lines are available. What are the alternative power sources you have? Now, if you don't understand what exactly is meant by the defined term value engineering, you will be in trouble when you are going to exercise this particular change. Right? This is the power source of a dairy farm. When you talk about the first element, that is the production of feed for cows up to the milk production, this says what is the electricity consumption. So you need to have at least 2,500 kilowatt hours at the peak, right? For these activities, such as milk cooling, water heating, milking, or other something like that, right? So you have got three options. Suppose within the specification, you have got a solar plant, solar panels, which is consisting of solar panels. Now, if you are going to introduce a substitute, because as you are aware, value engineering can occur until the completion of the project, even though the chances for value engineering diminishes along with time. So I don't have to explain that to you. So at the inception, at the initial stage of the project, if the designer wanted to change, if the designer wanted to change something, he can come up with any sort of a substitute, such as a wind power or mini hydropower plant. Okay. Now, with the transparency which has been achieved within FIDIC, you can understand that that room for value engineering, you need to understand the concept of the value engineering through the clauses. Then only you will be able to understand whether it is detrimental to the quality, reliability, or durability, or performance. Now, for example, the likes of Oman, the Middle Eastern countries that we are here, that there is some sort of a if there is any sort of a detriment to the quality or something like that, right? Now, in this part of the world, maintaining a solar power plant is not that easy as we think, because there is dust accumulation. You have to do a lot of changing, a lot of cleaning. So there will be, and that will attract more cost. So when you are thinking about those options, you have to understand whether the quality of the electricity which is being produced has been downgraded or not. I'm not going to talk much about this particular clause because the value engineering clause is a well-established clause in SBD2, but you need to understand there is one thing which has been changed in FIDIC Red Book. And if you see this part, right, see my cursor, there is a 50% which has been indicated within this particular clause in SBD2 as well, FIDIC 99. That 50% has now been taken out. It says the employer and the contractor has to agree as per the contract data in the beginning of the project what exactly should be shared. So this gives some sort of a flexibility for the contractor if the design is totally owned by the contractor or sometimes partially owned by the contractor. They can agree on different proportions of the value engineering. Because as you can see here, I will quickly explain you. This particular clause defines there are three cases, right? You know, when you are cutting down the cost of a particular project with the quality, with the detriment to the quality, you are not achieving value engineering, the concepts of the value engineering, right? Therefore, this case 3, which says if there is a change in the quality, right, the engineer has the privilege to value what is the quality reduction. In this particular example, I have explained how the value engineering clause has been mathematically interpreted. That means if there is a downgraded in the grade in the quality, that particular piece of cost will be taken out from the equation, and only the balance will be shared amongst the parties. But if there is nothing detrimental to the quality or performance of the value engineering option, the saving can directly be shared as per case 1. So I'm not going to discuss much more about that one. Right. Then we come into the non-intrusive approach of FIDIC. Right. Non-intrusive approach of FIDIC is very simple. As you can see, since you are coming from building services, engineering background, what you see on your right-hand side, what you see on your left-hand side is a traditional window which gives light and heat into the room. But what you see here on your right-hand side is a fully transparent solar cell. Okay, whilst giving that particular light and the heat into the room, it generates power as well. So FIDIC applied this particular concept into the non-intrusive approach. This is why I told you the person, natural person, right? He did not alter the terms in SBD 2 or FIDIC 99 version, but he added an additional word which describes that particular definition more precisely. Now you cannot say a company is a contractor's representative. Nobody can challenge this particular defined term. So this is the non-intrusive approach which is being applied here. The term natural person refers to a living human. This is actually me, okay? This is about 12 years back when I was working in Bara Al Jisa Resort and Spa in Oman, right? I was not the project manager there. I was just a site engineer or a quantity surveyor, right? Okay, and then you can see the term natural person refers to a living human being with certain rights and responsibilities under the law. By contrast, a legal person or an artificial person is a group of people that is considered by law. Maybe most probably it is a company. Okay, so this is why the red word has been added. The added value has been given to the definition of the contractor's representative. Now we come to the one of the most important parts, you know, the variations. If you are talking about the word variation, we are referring to the variation of the works. Okay, and this is FIDIC 1987 version. Most of these experienced engineers might have referred this particular standard form of contract, FIDIC 1987 version. It emphasizes on 3 things. Engineer can issue a variation when it is necessary or appropriate, but it should not vitiate or invalidate the contract. What do you mean by necessary? There is a necessity. Now, if you are talking about a structural slab, right? If you are talking about a structural slab and you find all of a sudden it is not in line with BS 8110, right? Your reinforcement, the bottom reinforcement is not suffice to cater the sagging of the slab. So you may encounter some sort of a difficulty. So when the engineer identified that there is an anomaly within the drawing, he has to add those additional reinforcement. This is a necessity. Otherwise, the structure will collapse. Okay. Now, if you are talking about the legal perspective, now this is what is contained within the contract. Okay. If it is not in accordance with the specification, you have to do a change and you have to do a variation. But when you are talking about the legal perspective, the necessity, the word necessity comes into play. Now, for example, let's say the country which I am living in has got a lot of apartments which are at close proximity. If you are taking into account the countries like Dubai or Qatar or something like that, they are very, very closely, densely populated. So there may be a certain stipulation by the law of that particular country which states in order for a fire truck to reach, there needs to be a certain gap between those two buildings. And all of a sudden, when you sign the contract, and all of a sudden you realize that the legislation has changed, right? Once the legislation has changed, either you have to shift the building or you have to omit a strip of the building in order to achieve the necessity of the legal requirement. So it is an objective term. But what do you mean by appropriate? appropriate. What is appropriate to you may not be appropriate to me. So this is a subjective term. FIDIC identified that, and these particular subjective terms have now been eliminated from the definitions of these particular clauses, the evolution of these clauses. And the third thing, no such variation shall in any way vitiate or invalidate the contract. What do you mean by that? The engineer can instruct a variation, but he can never change or alter the content, the intent of the contract. This has now been embedded within FIDIC 2017 version, which I will explain you once it goes to the next slides. So necessity versus appropriateness, when you are talking about that, there's a legal requirement to have seat belts, right? But people might have thought that if your spouse is shouting, it's other way around as well, right? When the wife is driving, the husband may also shout, right? So it's not only applicable to women. So whoever is shouting in the non-driver's seat, this is ideally the most appropriate way of putting the seat belt is what is stipulated within this right hand side. Okay, right. Now vitiate or invalidate. Now when you are kids or when you were small, you know that it is very easy to do the transformers, right? The car can easily be changed into a robot, but it is not that easy to do change a structural building, structural reinforced concrete building to a beehive shaped steel building, right? Because if the engineer gives an instruction to change a structural reinforced concrete building to a steel building, the basic concept of variation violates, because you may have selected a particular contractor knowing that he's good in structural design, right? Structural construction, with he's having a lot of constructional plant, he's having a lot of ready mix plant and all these things, but a steel building is a different expertise. So you might have given technical evaluation marks to a contractor thinking that he's good for the structural concrete. So this actually violates the sense of the variation. That is why it says vitiate or invalidate should not happen. This will become the contract invalidate. This will become negate the validity of the contract if you are drastically changing the specification. Now we are going to talk about the yield. Okay, as I have told you, the yield has got double meanings. Okay, the number one meaning of the word yield means that you are giving the productivity. Okay, you have that productivity. But if you are talking about the other sense of the yield, that means that you are surrendering. So here you can see very carefully, if you peruse this one, this is what is on your left hand side is the variation clause applicable to SPD2 and FIDIC Red Book 99 version. It talks about one occasion wherein the contractor can object to a variation, where there is the goods cannot be readily obtained. Now, for instance, when I was working in Petroleum Development of Oman, there was a drastic change from the conventional cement sand block work. They have changed to what is called autoclave aerated block work. If you are coming from a civil engineering background, I'm sure that you know about this. Autoclave aerated block work is a very lightweight block. You need only 6 of them in order to cover 1 square meters of a wall, as opposed to the standard cement sand block, wherein you need about 12-13 blocks in order to cover 1 square meter. So, and the other thing, from the building services engineering point of view, autoclave aerated block work are thermally more performing than the sand cement block work. So it is better. Your cooling system, you are designing for the air conditioning can reduce. Okay, so this is a very important thing. So this particular aspect has been taken into account in the previous version of SPD2, right? But here, when you are talking about FIDIC 2017 version, now there are 2 additional clauses which has been embedded into the 2000. On your right hand side, you can see in red. The varied work was unforeseeable. I told you that there is a defined term called unforeseeable. That means could not be easily foreseen by an experienced contractor at a particular date, that is the base date. Okay, so the varied work was unforeseeable having regard to the scope and nature of the works described in the specification. This is what I was telling you. From a reinforced concrete structure, it may give the same function. Okay, same number of rooms, same number of facilities, but you are going to change the structure from reinforced concrete structure to a steel building structure. Then it will be the scope and nature of the works described in the specification will be violated. So the contractor can object to a variation, saying, no, Mr. Engineer, I'm not going to do this one. Okay, that's perfectly fine. So the second thing is almost there. If there is any goods which cannot be bought, well, that is why I mentioned about AAC blocks. In Oman, AAC blocks are not being fabricated. Therefore, they may have to import that from another country, another Gulf country or something like that. So the goods are not readily available. So if you are practicing, if you are a planning engineer, if you are onto that Primavera programming and all these things, then you will realize the procurement activity which may affect the critical path of a project is not advisable. If you cannot buy that particular, it is not readily available, so the contractor can object to a variation. The third one, if it adversely affect the contractor's ability to comply with subclause 4.8. Now in Oman, the biggest project in Oman, which was done back in 2007-8, but it was completed very recently, the Oman airport, the Sultan Qaboos airport. There was a cyclone, which is known as Cyclone Gonu, which came in 2007, right? After the cyclone, they had to elevate the total area by 1 or 2 meters by using most of the soil. In Sri Lanka also, we experienced tsunami for the first time in 2004, I believe. Yeah, and then the government has imposed certain regulations. I think about 100 meters beyond that you cannot do the constructions, and previously it was not there, right? Maybe previously it was there, it was not in existence. The law has not been enforced. So they give emphasis to those changes. Now the contractor can come up and say, right, if it is in a Sri Lankan condition, if the employer asks you to do some coastal structure very closer to the beach, you can say that based on the regulations of Sri Lanka, you cannot do that one. You can object to the variation. So this is the sense of that one. And you have seen this SBD 2 and Feeding 99 does not define. You see these yellow colored ones. What do you mean by that? May is the word which is commonly used for discretional activities. That means if you are talking about the value engineering clause also, it says contractor may submit a value engineering proposal. So it is not compulsory. It is not obligatory, right, for you to give that one, right? But you know that certain countries that the forces people, some people, they stipulate that the people have to go to the forces. In Greece, I think it was there, we call it conscription, okay? That is compulsory military service. Now, likewise, the word which is equivalent in the standard form of contract pertaining to that conscription is called shall. Shall means you are contractually obligatory. So whenever you see the word shall, that term has been defined. Okay, that term has been defined. That means you are contractually obligatory to do something. So if you are a practicing engineer or a contract administrator, the best thing is you take the text searchable version of SBD2 and cluster them. Engineer shall find all the sentences containing the word engineer shall. So that means engineer has to contractually do that. So it is very good for you to understand. If you are working as a contractor, also the contractor shall can be used. So this is why the sense of a defined term will help you, right? Like that, the right to vary has been changed. I don't think I have to explain this further, right? Then let us go to the word which is very, very confusing, which is called omission. You might have seen in FIDIC 99 version and SBD2, it says the word omission is there. The word omission is there, but it does not say exactly what omission means. Now there are a lot of court cases pertaining to the omission. Let me just explain you what exactly that is, right? Now the word omission, as far as the legal context is concerned, is called, you are excluding something, you are leaving something out, but it does not give the room for the engineer to give it to another party. Okay, it does not give the room for the engineer to give it to another party. If you see the variation clause in SPD2 and FIDIC 99 version, it says the omission can happen at the discretion of the engineer, right? If it is not to be given to others. Now think about others. Now, for example, I'll give a simple example about this particular term, right? Suppose that you are just walk down the memory lane that suppose you are in the final year of your university or your technical institution, that you are organizing a party, right? All of a sudden, you think that your favorite teacher or your favorite lecturer should also be in the party, but you are telling it in an indirect way to your colleagues. Then you ask the question from your colleagues, can I invite the others? Yeah, then your friends will say, yeah, it's okay, you can invite the others as well. And all of a sudden, this your favorite lecturer comes into the party, and the other friends are starting to whisper, why is this guy has invited this particular lecturer? So this deprives us from having our flexibility. Our party mood has gone. But then you might say, why? I told that I will invite the others. So if the word others is not a defined term, you can come up with an ambiguity. You will encounter a lot of problems. You will encounter a lot of difficulties, right? So, however, the NEC version of the Red Book, actually, which we call that ECC contract, NEC 4 has now been issued in 2017. It defines what is the word others. Others are people or organizations who are not the client. That is the equivalent of that is the employer in FIDIC terminology. Project manager, the equivalent of engineer. The supervisor, adjudicator, or member. You can see the word others has also been defined, right? Now, if you go to the FIDIC terminology, the word others has not been defined. Somebody can argue. Okay, so the word omission in the particular variation clause, it says if it is not to be given to the others. But actually, FIDIC 2017 version very clearly stipulates it cannot be done by the employer or it cannot be done by other contractors. And the legal jargon, the legal terminology pertaining to the word omission means that you cannot take it out from the contractor and give it to another party. This is what it means. So the party means the employer or the contractor in the context required. Parties means both the employer and the contractor. Since I have a little bit of a time, I'm going back to this particular value engineering clause, which I have explained to you, right? Now, this particular value engineering example, which I have told you, now if you misunderstand the value engineering clause, right? Sometimes you may think, now this is a very important aspect of quantity surveying and contract administration. When you are always talking about the reducing the cost, now look at this, right? This is the value engineering clause. Now you will say, has FIDIC got wrong in this regard? Reducing the cost of the employer to executing, maintaining, operating the works. Now you are seeing, because whenever a quantity surveyor or contract administrator, or we are talking about the cost, we are talking about the construction cost, because we are confining that particular cost to the construction contract that we are administering. Am I right? Okay. So now when you are talking about a variation, right? When you are talking about a variation, if there is a reduction in price in terms of the establishment, in terms of establishing that particular item, we call it a negative variation. But you are seeing only the tip of the iceberg. There is a bigger picture wherein you have a maintenance cost, you have got a operating cost, you have an end of life cost as well. Therefore, the cost here is not the defined term cost. It says reduce the cost of the employer of executing, maintaining, or operating the works. It is not the capital C. The one which starts from the capital C is cost which is related to the contractual variations, right? Here, it gives the bigger picture. FIDIC has been drafted by people with engineering background. So they cannot go beyond the notions of the engineering. Those are the basics of engineering. Value engineering, as I have told you, value engineering, if you are doing a cost-cutting exercise, that is not value engineering. So reducing the cost of the employer in executing, maintaining, operating the works means, right? If you are talking about the total overall cost. And then you are talking about improving the efficiency or value to the employer of the completed task. Now, this is what we call as the value addition. Okay, if there is a value addition which you can give, definitely you can take it into the context, right? So this particular scenarios, 3 scenarios which I have explained to you, I will give you with a very simple example. Right now, I have to come back to a civil engineering example because my basic degree is in civil engineering, so I have to give a little bit of a fairness to the civil engineering people as well. Right now, assume that you are introducing a marble, okay, a local marble in place of a Italian marble or a very international sort of a marble, right? And all of a sudden, the contractor comes to you and say, Mr. Engineer, I'm going to give you a saving of 36,000 reals of money to a local marble in place of a high-end marble. Now the employer looks into that one. Then the employer asks the engineer, will it change the quality of my building? Can it be sold? Because now, for example, RICS, Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, has given valuation standards. So in the valuation standards, it is very important to identify what are the parameters which defines the quality of the project. Okay, the parameters which defines the quality of the project may be appearance. Architects love appearance. Okay, the engineers also like that the appearance is very pleasing. Now people do like to have buildings of better architectural performance than ugly looking buildings. So he will ask the question from the engineer, why, whether the quality has been reduced. Then the engineer say, yes, Mr. Employer, the quality has gone down. This is why this 50% came into play when you are talking about this particular change. Again, looking at the case 3, it says, if there is a change in the quality, that the total saving, the split of the saving does not belong to the contractor. The engineer has to assess. Once again, this sort of a definition is becoming a little bit ambiguous. If you are talking about reduction, okay, based on the engineer's assessment of the quality, it is very difficult for you to monitor. It is difficult for you to give price to a quality change. So this is why the FIDIC has now defined whatever the changes, whatever the split of the sharing of the benefit has to be agreed in advance between the employer. It is little bit now flexible. So this is what I think I have to state. I believe you have gathered something from today's lecture. Over to you, the organizers, and thank you very much for inviting me. I would like to hand over now to the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Priyanka.
Yeah.
This is Dylan from Building Services Engineering Section Committee of ISL.
Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. From this point onwards, I'll be the moderator for the lecture. You can forward me the questions via Zoom chat by selecting moderator, and I'll be putting forward the questions into the attention of our lecturer on behalf of you. So, ladies and gentlemen, please text the questions that you have to the Zoom chat. We'll try our maximum to answer each questions within the allowed time slot to us in the Zoom space. Meantime, we got 2 questions. I'll be reading those. The first one is, in 20 years' time, actually the question is from Mr. Vimal Disanayaka. In 20 years' time, change of defined terms from 15 to 89, which means the term inclusiveness is not properly explained in the knowledge of the book. Or there can be found term requirement but not limited to numerous occasions in design codes. How to make sure this 2017 version won't be revised again?
It's a very good question. I think Mr. Vimal Disanaka, thank you very much for raising this question. Now I will come back to this one. Actually, in FIDIC 1977 version, there were actually 15 defined terms, as you have quite rightly stated. From 15 to 89 is a big jump. Am I right? Now, the issue here is, if you are talking about, yes, you're asking your question, I will apportion them into two parts. Number one, whether the inclusiveness is there or not. Now, this is why the word, now I'll give you one simple example. The change management in any contract has got two elements, that is time and cost, and there's a third element, quality as well. Variation, can you believe it? The word variation was not a defined term until FIDIC 99 version. The word claim was not a defined term until FIDIC 99 version. Therefore, people try to misuse that one. Even though the word variation gives the English literal meaning of that, gives you the correct sense, right? Unless and until it is defined, people can make use of it. Even though people are aware what it is, they can challenge it. Now, this is where now he's asking the first question, whether the inclusiveness is there or not. Yes, I do agree with you. They are trying to have that inclusiveness as much as possible, right, with the FIDIC 2017 version. Yet, now for example, I gave you an example, the word others is not a defined term in FIDIC 2017 version. Yes, there is no assurance that the FIDIC will not change the defined terms anymore, but there is one thing which I needed to tell you, Mr. Disanayake. If you go through the NEC type of contract, new engineering contract, it has been written in plain English. That the wordings in the NEC type of contract is written in very plain English, but the FIDIC, always they challenge the FIDIC terminology. They say, always you need a lawyer. Why are you making the lawyers rich, right, by using FIDIC 2000 FIDIC version? Now, FIDIC, now the likes of advance warning, the likes of more defined terms, now FIDIC is trying to reach closer to the people who are not specialized in this area, especially the employer. You know, not all the employers are engineering specialists, right? Therefore, if something is written in plain English, that is better. FIDIC is trying to achieve that one, but I can give you that we cannot make sure that this is going to be not going to be revised again. It has to be revised once again.
Right. We got another question, Engineer Bianca.
Yeah.
The question is from Mr. Rohita Tiruma Vidana. Question is, suppose there is a pipeline to be laid between 2 points. The distance between 2 points is 500 meters. Because an objection from one person to give his land to lay, the pipeline has to lay a big ground and the length is 1000 meters. After awarding the contract, contractor got the clearance of that particular person to lay the pipe. This resulted the deduction of pipe length, which means value engineering. The saving due to this can be owed to the contractor. One question: can client insist not paying for the balance 500 meters? So this is his question.
Yeah. Actually, Engineer Trimavidana, I know him personally. Thank you very much for attending this one. Right. Your question, I will apportion it like this. Suppose there is a pipeline to be laid between 2 points. The distance between 2 points is 500 meters because of an objection from one person to give his land to lay the pipe. The pipe has to lay a big ground and the length is 1000 meters. Now let us understand the essence of the problem. Normally, whenever there is a project which needed to be signed between the parties, you have to take some no objection. Now we are doing an periphery survey in order to get some approvals from certain parties. Okay. Now this has become a situation which is beyond the control of both of the parties. We can put this into two different scenarios. Number one, there is a legal stipulation. If you are going into that particular pipeline has been laid within someone else's land, right? You are calling it as trespassing, right? It is against the law of the country. Now, without his consent, if the engineer has done something like that, this is a necessity because there's a necessity to change this one. So it will definitely be a variation, right? That is number one. So that is one of the things which we normally call it as the employer's risks as well, right? So one part of this is the pipe has to lay for a bigger length. Yes, after awarding the contract, this is going to be a variation because this is a necessity to do that one. And then he comes up with this results in the reduction of pipe length. The contractor got the clearance of the particular person to lay the pipe. Now, the saving due to this can be on to the contractor. Can client this is not paying the balance 500 meters. Now, this is little bit confusing because if he has given that consent after some time, that means you are going back to the terms and condition of the contract. Okay, you are not altering that one because you were mentioning the 500 meter in both cases. Because of an objection to give the labor, the pipe has to lay a big ground of the length is 1000 meters. Can I ask this? I think, I assume that this 1000 meters were at the time of signing the contract. If I may read it correctly. At the time of signing the contract, because of this objection, it was 1000. Okay, then my first scenario did not come into play. Now he is saying that there is a reduction for 500. Now this particular change is actually, we cannot call it as same function. Yes, we cannot call it as a value engineering option. Yes, I believe the saving can be shared between the contractor and the employer.
Right, we got another question. The name is same as Vishnuja, I think. Is right. The short question: in value engineering, the cost of the item can be increased.
Yeah. Now, when you are talking about the word cost, right? This is why I'm again going back to this particular definition. Let me just tell you this one. Normally, the value engineering, the definition of value engineering means overall cost. Okay. So if you are talking in terms of the overall cost, right? It does not go in line with the definition of value engineering. The cost can be increased does not mean value engineering because the employer at the beginning of the contract ensures cost certainty. He ensures cost certainty if it exceeds his budget. If it exceeds his budget, I do not call it as value engineering. So I don't think if the cost is increased, it is considered as value engineering.
Right. We got one more question from Mr. Dushyanta Jayawardena. Question is, apart from the time extension and variation clauses, what are the other widely used FIDIC clauses?
Okay, that is also a very nice question. Now, for example, I will just explain this with what I am sharing. Now, in this particular, can I just share the screen? Okay, 1 minute. Let me go here. Right. Now, you can see that there is a cluster, right? There are clusters of definitions. You can easily go through this one because SBD2 and FIDIC Redbook 99 version has got this one. I will quickly go there. Yeah, this is the one, right? The contract has been clustered into 6 different elements. Number 1 is the contract. Number 2, parties and persons. Number 3, dates, tests, periods, and completion. Number 4, money and payments. Number 5, works and goods. Number 6, other definitions. Okay. Now, when you are talking about the claims and variations, the time aspect has been taken into account within the claim. The cost aspect has been taken into account within the variation. But if you are talking about new engineering contract, we call it compensation event. What they do is they integrated the time and cost aspect together, right? Bundled them together. New engineering contract does not talk about variation separately, claim separately. Okay. Now his question is if there is anything else that you want to say. Yes, there are things which are related to the quality. There are things which are related to the sustainability, right? So these now most widely used clauses, payment clause, right? If you are talking about the payment clause, there are a lot of payment clauses related to that. Then there are other things related to the completion of the project. Now, for example, program. If you see the program, there are a lot of additional stipulations within FIDIC 2017 version. Apart from the word program, which is given in 99 version. Now, if you see the 99 version, we look at things retrospectively. We are not looking at things prospectively. If everything goes smooth, you never bother about the program. Am I right? Okay. Now, FIDIC, with the advent of 2017 version, they go again closer to NEC type of contract, which states the program has to be reviewed in certain intervals. Even though the things do not go wrong, advanced warning system has to be given. So that sort of clauses are very, very important. So if I say the most widely used terms, yes, you are correct. Variations, claims, payment provisions, right? Program related clauses, as well as the periods of completion. That is what I can
Right. Question, dear sir, can you please briefly explain about natural contractors representative, since the word person is in previous version?
Yes, you are correct. 100% correct. Now see, this is the definition. Why I tell you like that is, once again, I'm coming back to that one. Contractors representative. In the normal context, contractors representative is the project manager. Am I right? You call it the contractors project manager. Here, the previous version, SBD2, it says the person named by the contractor in the contract. If somebody challenges the person, okay, this is what we call as not defined. Okay, we call as a contra preferentum principle. When something has not been, this is a legal term, contra preferentum principle means if there is something which is not clear, the drafter should not get the benefit out of this. So who is the drafter? The employer. Okay, we are the ones who are giving, now suppose you are the employer, right? We are the ones who are giving that particular contract to that particular contractor. Okay, so if that particular adjective natural is not there, the contractor can argue and say contractor's representative can be an organization. How can you challenge that one? Okay, that is why the word natural person has been indicated.
All right. Next question from Mr. Malik Mendis. The SBD2 they have taken out where if an employer makes an unfair claim on the performance security, the employer can be liable for damages. Many contractors in Sri Lanka are currently complaining that many employers are making claims on PS because of COVID-19. And the SBD2 doesn't give them relief. What do you think can be done?
Yeah. Now, yeah, I think this is revolving around the word COVID-19. Now, it is there is a legal principle which is called loss lies where it falls. Okay. Now, there is a very famous law case in the history where there was a bridge. Okay, where there was a bridge being constructed, and where there was a employer's office next to the building bridge. Okay, all of a sudden some natural calamity came. Okay, some natural calamity came towards the completion, nearing the completion of the bridge. The bridge went away, and the particular employer's office went away. The loss lies where it falls stipulates, right, that the first party who is responsible for that particular loss has to bear the consequences of that. Now, in this case, neither party is bearing the loss of that one, right? So, COVID-19, if I can do a separate presentation, that would have been better. COVID-19 is called a pandemic, right? Now, there is the word pandemic is not there, but the word epidemic is there in FIDIC 99 version. I'm not sure about the SBD. I think it is also there. Unfortunately, if it is not listed as an employer's risk, it is unfair to charge from the employer based on the loss lies where it falls principle. Therefore, the people who have suffered that particular loss, right? If it is not based on, now think about the general legal principle, how a common man thinks. If it is not my fault, why should I pay? This is what is said. But if it is specifically stated as an employer's risk or a special risk, definitely the employer has to bear that one. So it is case by case, but unfortunately it is not the loss lies where it falls principle applies.
Next question, is FIDIC applicable to government-funded projects in Sri Lanka? That's the question.
Oh, unfortunately, I have been away from Sri Lanka for about 12. Now I came to Oman in 2006 actually. Unfortunately, I'm unable to answer this question. I think people who are working in this industry can say, but I do know the FIDIC. Can you repeat the question, Dilan, please?
Yeah, is FIDIC applicable to government-funded projects in Sri Lanka?
Yeah. Now I can tell you like this: FIDIC is an international contract. Applicable in the sense it is a choice. Applicable is a choice of the employer. If you use the word, if you choose that particular standard form of contract, yes, it is applicable. That's what I can tell.
All right. Next question from Mr. Leslie Kumara. Standard form of contracts are written reasonably sharing the risk, but nowadays most of the tender documents it has been revised to be biased towards the client. As professional in this industry, what we can do for these situations?
Yes, actually the risk sharing now in the UK context there is something called Unfair Terms Act, right? Now I can tell you now it is based on the law of different countries. Now I'll give you one simple example. I can take it from the code, actually Oman Civil Code. Unfortunately, I'm going to take because this is the country which I am living in, right? Oman Civil Code says one thing, right? That if there is any, this is applicable to Sri Lanka as well. Now you know the penalties, right? There is a clause that the penalties is no more there. We call it as liquidated damages. Okay, liquidated damages. We call it as liquidated and ascertained damages. That means prior entering into the contract, it has already been ascertained by the parties to the contract. If you delay this by 1 day, I will charge you this particular amount. But it is not as easy as you think when it goes to the courts. The employer has to prove that you have lost this amount of money. Now, for example, let's say you are making a building and you are, while you are making that particular building, the previously allocated staff in a particular site, right? Until they are occupied, they will be in a hotel, right? 1 day delay of that particular project will incur cost to the employer, right? Now, there are two legal principles applying into that one, what we call as quantum merit and unjust enrichment. Employer is not allowed to make an unjust enrichment based on this sort of a situation, right? If it goes to the legal scenario, once again, the best way to identify is whether the employee is getting an unjustified profit out of the situation, because everything is now measured in money, right? Therefore, Unfair Terms Act 1977 version is in what you call UK deprives most of the unfair terms, such as pay when paid, that you call it as the back-to-back payment. Even the Housing Grants Regeneration Act, which was issued in 1996 in UK, also deprives that. So this is as per the country to the country, but unfortunately, regarding Sri Lanka's situation, I'm not sure about the law, right? Unfortunately, I'm not much familiar with that one. But there should be definitely an Unfair Terms Act. So unfair terms can be eliminated with the advent of the law, with the inclusion of the law, legal principles.
Right. The next question from Mr. Nimal Ranasinghe. Why the risk and responsibility drastically changed in 2017 compared to 1990? What's the real gain to employer?
Yeah, now actually, Dilan, if possible, please share this gentleman's email ID. I have to give him a more robust answer to this question, because it's a very widely used this thing. I'm sorry, Mr. Ranasinghe, I cannot give a very quick answer to this one, but definitely I will answer to your question. Please, Dilan, do send me his contact details, right? I will contact him and explain him why this has happened. Okay.
Next question from Mr. Muthunayak, I think. Thank you for the valuable webinar. After the COVID, there's a new normal situation. Can you explain about the force majeure and COVID impact? I think similar questions
Yeah, this is also a similar type of question. I know there are a lot of articles which has been written regarding the COVID-19 situation. The fundamental principle is also that what I told you, the loss lies where it falls. Because the earlier version of FIDIC also, they are talking about the time, but regarding the cost which has been incurred by the contractor, if since it is not the employer's fault, and if it is not listed under that particular form of contract, there is a question whether the employer is supposed to pay that one. It is unfair from the employer's perspective if you talk into that one. But once again, I would like to get this gentleman's number, Mr. Hanasinghe, right? I will give a detailed explanation to this situation for his specific question.
From Mr. Nihaj Mohammed. In value engineering, only concern of reduction of cost. Sometimes proposal comes up increasing the value but not reducing the cost. No compliment for contractor of those proposal. Well, there's no question, but I'm sorry.
No, I think what I understood what he said. Increasing the value, but there is no reduction in the cost. Now it's a very, very important thing, you know, that you cannot monetize the increase of the value. It's correct. It is a loophole which is appeared within FIDIC. I highly appreciate this particular question. What he says is, right, without the reduction of the cost, that you increase the value. Now let us try to put this into the framework of the FIDIC, what do you call, the value engineering clause. Let me just explain this to you. Right, there is a place which states otherwise beneficial to the contractor. Where is it? Okay. See, if you go into this one, right here. Otherwise be better. Now there are 4 instances which defines value engineering. One is acceleration completion. Number 2, reduce the cost to the employer. It is also not falling into that one. Improve the efficiency or value to the employer of the completed works may. Okay. Value and cost are 2 different things. Okay. Now you know the antique value. If you are talking about the wedding gown of Princess Diana, you cannot price it as the one which is the actual value of that one. So it is of immense value to the loyalist of the royalists. Okay. Now it is something like that. But if you are talking about improving the value to the employer, that needs to be monetized. It is very difficult task. There is no set forth guideline in order to monetize the value addition. It's a very good question. Give me his contact details as well. I will explain you with the other because it will take a little bit of time for me to explain. Yeah.
Right. Next question from Mr. Samira Ratnayaka. If you consider this conceptual drawing and specification for the design build project, what is the first priority document contractor need to consider?
All right. Okay. Now it is conceptual drawing and the specification. I think it refers to FIDIC Yellow Book. What is the equivalent of FIDIC Yellow Book in Sri Lanka? I'm not quite sure. It is designed and built by the contractor. Normally, let me tell you, it's like this. Specification defines how to do the building. Drawings define what to do. Okay. So those 2 things are at the same level, because without how to do the building, you cannot say what to do, right? However, in FIDIC Red Book 99 onwards, specification becomes above the drawing, right? So this comes into the play whenever there is an ambiguity or discrepancy. So he is asking the question, which will prevail, whether the conceptual drawing or the specification. It is subjective. It is case by case, because there may be certain. Now let's say you put a clause saying specification is above the concept drawing, but what if there is something missing in the specification? Okay, what if there is something missing in the specification that needs to be corrected? So in my opinion, the most tangible or most fair way of assessing this is the documents need to be mutually explanatory.
Next question is from Mr. Niron Fernand. Can you briefly explain validity of claims due to pandemic situation, considering the time and cost.
Due to pandemic situation, the validity of claim, the time is definitely granted. The cost depends. There may be certain stipulations like, if the contractor has not adhered to the proper health and safety measures, right? Definitely he will not get certain money. But when you're talking about the time, when you're giving the time, sometimes you may have to give the preliminaries. Sometimes you may have to give the preliminaries pertaining to that one. So it is also subjective based on the particular conditions. Sometimes the particular conditions define that one. So what I would do is give this gentleman's contact as well. Force majeure situation in different contexts can be defined in different ways, right? So basically, fundamentally, the time is given, that I can tell you, but cost, not most of it.
All right. Next one from Mr. Chatura Jayasingha. If the engineer instruct for a variation which will reduce the cost of a particular part of the work, can this be invoked as a value engineering by the contractor for an additional incentive?
Yeah, can you please repeat the question?
Yeah. If the engineer instruct for a variation which will reduce the cost of a particular part of the work, can this be invoked as a value engineering by contractor for an additional incentive?
No. It is like this, right? And now the FIDIC new version, it says variation by instruction and variation by proposal. There are two different things that we need to discuss. Variation by instruction can reduce the cost because if it is a necessity. Now I'll give you an example, right? Let's say that you are constructing a building which is obstructing the view of a CEO of the adjacent building, right? Then you have to do that deduction. You have to reduce because the right of light is a statutory requirement. It is a right of a person, right? You are talking about an omission. Omission is, if it is necessary for the omission, that reduction of the cost cannot be considered as a value engineering proposal.
Right. Next question is again from Mr. Malik Mendis. I think we have one more question from this gentleman before as well. I am a FIDIC certified trainer, also a listed reviewer of FIDIC 2017 RB and LB. If a party or engineer does not give an advance warning and the event affects the works, do you think there should be a penalty on the party or engineer who did not give the advance warning?
Mr. Mendis, I am very much privileged that you are a FIDIC accredited trainer, and I will give you my insight about this. It is like this. Now, Mr. Mendis, there is a provision in the extension of time clause, right? If the contractor does not give sufficient notice within 28 days, he loses his right for the claim, extension of time claim. It is specifically expressly written that if you do not provide this, you will lose your right. Now, if you see the FIDIC 2017 version, there is no express statement as such. So he does not give that advance warning, right? Let me just tell you, right? It is like this, expressly stated advance warning, early warning. Actually, this NEC type of contract has got a very, very lengthy sort of a stringent approach. But in the FIDIC one, I'm not sure, right? But I can tell you, this is the only location where the advance warning has been mentioned. In this one also, if you go to clause number 3.8, it talks about management meetings. Okay, so the only way that this advance warning has to be given by a particular party to the contract is either through a management meeting or any other type of a meeting. Since there is no express statement, if you do not give advance warning, you will bear the consequences of that. I do believe there is no legitimate ground to make a claim against that party.
Right. Next one from Mr. Mohan Kumar. What are the likelihoods of COVID-19 based claim succeeding in FIDIC contracts in Oman or similar locations? under each of the following heads. Part A, force majeure. Part B, change of law. Part C, disruptions.
Yes. Now, if you are talking about the FIDIC-based contracts in Oman, what is being used in Oman here is based on FIDIC third edition. It is 1977 version, right? Now, if you are talking about FIDIC form of contract, now I will talk in general because I cannot confine this to Oman. There are three things. Number one, force majeure. Force majeure is a defined term in FIDIC 99, where there are listed elements which has been very clearly stipulated. What are the force majeure events, right? Change in law, yes, of course, that the right to vary, that the change in legislation is beyond the control of each parties, but the employer has admitted the fact that if there is a change in law, he will pay the price for that one. So item number B is very clear. If there is any sort of a change in statutory requirements, that additional cost, that is why I'm saying that there are certain rooms for. Now, for example, let's say there is a change in law due to COVID-19. There is a change in law due to COVID-19, which imposes some sort of an additional cost to the contract, right? So, change in legislation, if that particular clause is there within the standard form of contract that you are using in that particular country, then you have a claim. When you are talking force majeure in isolation, it depends on the definition of the word force majeure, because some of the force majeure cases you are not allowed for cost. Some of the force majeure causes you are allowed for cost. And the disruptions is a totally different subject. It's very interesting that he has asked this gentleman. Disruption can be measured by different ways. I'll tell you one of the most popular methods, which is called the measured mile. So that measured mile method means, had the contractor smoothly progressed without any sort of an interruption, what would have been the case? Okay, what would have been the case? So the disruption claim, there is no stipulation in the FIDIC earlier versions about that one disruption claim. But regarding the delay, now the FIDIC 2017 version now mentions about what you call SCL protocol. SCL protocol means Society of Construction Law. There is a protocol how the delay will be analyzed. But regarding the disruption analysis, there is no set forth procedure given in this one. But it can be a claim, because there can be some other claims which can be made by the, if it is legitimate, because unforeseen situations. If you are talking about any sort of a ground for an unforeseen situation, special circumstance, yes, you can make a claim on that.
Next question is from Mr. Rasika Rajapaksha. Can anyone in the contractor's organization, other than the contractor's representative, serve the notice of claim under subclause 20.1 of GCC?
I think he's talking about GCC means Gulf countries, something like that. I'm not quite sure what GCC means here. But anyway, if you're talking about 20.1, 1 minute, I'll give you a general answer to this one. It's like this. Anyway, I want to understand whether my answer is not applicable to what he's asking. Please give me his contact details. I will contact him. But I'll give you a general answer. Anyone in the contractor's organization other than the contractor's representative. Now here, FIDIC 2017 version very clearly mentions contractor's representative has to be named within the contract data. Okay. Now his deputy or the structural engineer, unless he is given any sort of authority, specific express authority, he cannot raise a claim. Contractor's representative is the person who can raise the claim.
Next one is a bit of a long question. In a road contract, there are 20 individual roads. However, employer took rates as a common VOQ without going individual road-wise. Employer given road-wise VOQ saying as it is not contractual binding. Contractor use this to prepare rates. Contractor has to do the design after awarding. After design quantities and items under each individual roads, then when execution, so many items added to individual road, some are omitted. But rate for these items are in common VOQ. these new items not considered for contractors' rates. Can't we consider this as a total variation to the contract?
This is based on the magnitude of the change. He mentions in a road contract there are 20 individual roads. However, employer to creates as a common BOQ with right. I got his point. It's like this. When you're talking about schedule of rates type of a contract, sometimes we call it schedule of rates type of a contract. That depends on the type of contract that he's signing. Okay, I don't think this is a schedule of rates contract with the way that he has asked the question. What he says is there are certain unforeseen items, right? You are talking about a hypothetical situation, right? And then all of a sudden you may have encountered something like a sand dune, right? Something like a rock where there is no borehole has been done. Yes, I do agree with you. There is something called star rates, which will administer the contract in that set of variations. Yes, but total variation to the contract, I don't know what he means by that one. Total variation in the sense, I believe what he believes is rate becomes inapplicable. Rate becomes inapplicable. That is case by case. If the contract, this is why the FIDIC 2017 version has introduced, right? The employer shall give all the data, right? Now, for example, now the climatic data also has been given because it is a very vague term, right? In the climatic conditions, it says exceptionally adverse climatic conditions, right? Now, suppose we all are in a classroom and one of you is excel very well, right? You are getting 90, 100 marks for each and everything, and we all are getting 50 marks. Then we call you as an exceptional person. But if we all are within the 80s and all 90s, you cannot call that person as an exceptional character, right? So therefore, this is very subjective. It is not a, but NEC type of contract, it is very clearly mentioned that if that particular environmental impact has not happened within 10 years, last 10 years, you are not entitled for an extension of time claim. So here, this is also a very case-specific example, which he has highlighted. If it is not contained within the contract data furnished by the employer, such as borehole details for a particular road, yes, of course, the rate can vary. The person can say rate becomes inapplicable. Yes, there is a room for variation with the star rates.
Next question is from Ms. Sunila Damayanti. If the interest delay and the interest claim is asked by the contractor, how effective to value engineering?
Right. Interest, actually, the interest delay, I think she is referring to the interesting delay. I'm not quite clear with this question. Please ask her to send. I mean, please get that question. I will explain this to the IESL separately on this regard. I'm not quite clear about this question.
Meantime, we got some comment from Mr. Malik Mendis saying that SPD4 is equivalent to Yellow Book.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Mendis. Honestly, I'm not much familiar with that one. Did he mention that SPD4, that the priority of the documents there? Because it depends. Okay, that's fine. No problem. Thank you.
Next one from Mr. Vimal Dasanayaka. What are the major reasons for variations in practical scenario? Design deficiency or over design or any other?
Okay, what are the major variations in practical design? Yes, this one I'll give you a very, very comprehensive answer. As I have told you, there are three things which is governing a variation. Okay, even though these particular terms are not there now, this governs a lot of, because FIDIC 1987 version has been in practice for a long period of time. Okay, right. So I will give you the good example regarding this. Now, major variation causes are necessity, okay, appropriateness, right, and we shall not vitiate or invalidate the contract. We will leave aside the vitiate or invalidate the contract because it is something else. It is not the major cause. It is rather a definition. It is rather a guideline. Appropriateness and necessity. If in any case it does not comply with the intent of the deliverable, because you cannot construct a slab with 3 columns if the fourth edge of the slab is going to be fallen, because you know that the load has to be safely transferred, right? So the necessity, one is the legal stipulation, other one is the contractual stipulation. So if there is anything which needs the necessity, which emphasizes the necessity, that is variation can be issued. Then the appropriateness. Now, for example, I give you an example. Now, suppose that you are making a mixed-use development project, and you have filling stations, right? All of a sudden, you realize that people who are going to be potential owners of that area are going to use electric cars. So where is the place for the charging points? Okay, there is no necessity to have charging points in the mixed-use development project, right? But it is appropriate. It is good for the sustainability of the project. Therefore, the variation can be issued. So the necessity and appropriateness are the governing factors.
Right. In the Zoom chat, I think we got all the questions. Meantime, we got a lot of thank you notes for your lecture.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
And we got some email addresses as well. We will share those to you.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we can allow 2 or 3 questions with raise hand option.
Okay.
If
please,
someone willing to.
Mr. Nihaj Mohammed, yes, you may ask the question.
Yeah. Explains very comprehensively, but in the case if the value sometimes we require to evaluate the functional reductions in the values. Sometimes if the contractor comes up with some proposal at which the value little bit reduced as well as the cost also reduced. So in case we want to find how much values reduction took place, it's sometimes so difficult. Some functional and convenience could be reduced by the employer. So in case it's so difficult to apply the value engineering in Sri Lankan context, how about the international exposure?
Now let me give you this. Now, as I have explained to you, by the way, thank you very much for your comment. As I have explained to you, there are 7 parameters which defines the word value engineering in the contractual context. Okay, but out of these 7, 3 of them are mostly procedural. Number 1 is a discipline procedure. Number 2 is a necessary function. Then the minimum cost, it addresses cost. Then quality, reliability, performance, or delivery. Okay, so achieving value engineering in terms of quality, reliability, performance, or delivery may not be a very easy task, as you have quite rightly suggested. Now let me give you one example. Suppose that you are doing a mock-up room. Okay, you are doing a mock-up room, and there is a particular painting in that particular mock-up room which falls into which is fitting. This can only be seen by an eye of an architect only, right? See how complicated this thing is. That particular painting, okay, you wanted to have this particular hotel as a, let's say, ancient type of hotel. So what is related to 60s or 70s? Now let us say you wanted to have a picture of the group called Bangles. You know that there was a famous band called Bangles, right? They had a song called Walk Like an Egyptian, right? And then in place of that particular painting, you wanted to have Taylor Swift's painting. It won't fit into this one, even though both are very talented singers or bands, right? So this is delivery. This is what we call as delivery, right? So achieving value engineering in terms of delivery is the most difficult task. I'll give you one other example. Now you know this the Lasith Malinga's action of bowling. You know, it is unique to him. Am I right? It is like that particular art, that particular painting in the mock-up room. So in the value context, it's very difficult for you to do like that if it does not fit into the purpose. So the fit for purpose is the major governing thing in international value engineering context.
In the meantime, we got some more text type question. from S. Paranitharan. So without the approval of engineer, contractor do the variation work, claim for payment. Can claim for payment like that.
Can you repeat the question, please?
It's more like a statement. Without the approval of engineer, contractor do the variation of work and claim for payment.
Okay, very nice question. Now there are 6 WH questions which come into play when you're talking about the variations. Okay, what can be varied, who can vary, when can you vary that, where can you vary that, how can you vary that? Okay, like that. So engineer is the person, it is very clearly mentioned within the variation clause, right? It is the engineer who can do the variation. No one else can do the variation, right? It says here, variations may be initiated by the engineer, right? Nowhere within the standard form of contract related to FIDIC, it says the contractor variations may be initiated by the contractor. Your question falls into the category where the owner of the variation is exercising something which is prohibited. Therefore, he is not having any sort of a claim in this regard. Actually, the engineer can say, Mr. Contractor, you are acting against the intent of the contract. So definitely you have to break that one. You have to take it out. You have to alter this. I think that is the answer to the question.
Right. We can allow one more raise hand questions if anyone is willing to. I think we have answered, I think, around 45 minutes or so.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think. All right. With that, let's move to the conclusion of the lecture then. Before moving to the conclusion, we would like to make an announcement. Our next public lecture is on 8th July 2020 with the title of Engineering Facade Design for Modern High-Rise Buildings by Dr. Senaka Dharmatilaka. He's a well-experienced person in that sector. The topic is straightly one of the key disciplines in building services. Flyer has been already circulated by ISL, and we invite all of you to participate in that event as well. With that, we'll move towards the closure remarks of the lecture today. This has been our first webinar that we have conducted as a Building Services Engineering Sectional Committee. And it's been a challenge for us to arrange everything in fresh approaches. Therefore, kindly bear with us with any deficiency that you have experienced today. In addition, it's been a great pleasure for us to organize this lecture with, from the beginning with engineer Priyanka Karunaratne, who is settled in Oman. He was with the full interest to share the knowledge that he gained for the benefit of the people of his motherland. Added to that, he took the challenge of conducting our first webinar without any hesitation. On behalf of ISL, we really value and appreciate the commitments given by engineer Priyanka Karunaratne for making this event a success amidst his occupied activities where he is settled. In addition, we saw a broader audience that we cannot generally expect in ISL auditorium. It's our enthusiasm that we could gather this interesting audience for this lecture. Thank you very much for all of you for being participated, and hope to see you all in the next lecture organized by Building Services Engineering Section Committee. This event wouldn't be realistic without the valuable support given by ISL staff. We take this opportunity to thank them for their valuable support. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude the webinar today. Good night, everyone, and see you all in our next lecture.